that, welcome back to another episode of Who's to Say. I'm your host today, always, Tomfoolery. That music is not original. Hopefully some of the thoughts will be, but that I have yet to track down the original source of that composition, which I thought was beautiful enough to share with you all today as hopefully you too, explore some of the ideas around our story, our personal stories, and those are our daily stories that make us, maybe not make us, but create for us opportunities to do what we do. Beliefs, behaviors, thought, word, deed, those have an image and likeness to really ancient stories. Not detail for detail, and certainly for their general imagery, and one that I've been exploring to my great benefit and entertainment recently has been The Lord of the Rings. And having grown up with those epic movies and rewatching them again for greater context and comprehension is really a great gift from cinema, and can't help but be grateful for that. As much as I rail against Hollywood and what it is now, it still has its great presence in the world. And so to retell those stories has been really cool, and inviting myself to get into the books by Tolkien, I found it interesting learning about his deep interest in all myth and the variety of stories. And for that, I'll direct you to at least where I got that video, where I received that video that I played with that lovely music to start, is from unauthorized.tv, which has a treasure trove of great information and inspires a lot of what I've decided to do here. I can't only speak about Lord of the Rings. We'd be here for years, most likely. So one place I do want to begin is, I'm bringing up my screen. I encourage you to watch the video on these as we get into great shares, of which there are many, and I'm open to receiving any. So, I posted this video, I forget where, Instagram and Telegram, all good channels, again, for shares and the circulation of thoughtfully and well-presented ideas and occasionally images. So I'll share any that I think are relevant from this video, entitled, "Why do you think the Appalachian area was hit hardest? What's their angle?" And the they that I try not to refer to, they're still men and women. Not still. They are, undeniably, consistently. And they're all acting according to their own scripts and stories that they're creating for themselves. And who's to say what may yet be written for their stories, as well as yours, as well as mine, and what influences that? Power, money, ego, trauma, take your pick. They're all really dynamic forces in this world. And some of them even have the influence to create the weather
around the truth-seeking side of the web. This includes themes about geoengineering that most people don't talk about, including...
Great, we're stopping already to say that if you see what this already is early instances and images of geoengineering and how that manifests in the physical world through our sky, our atmosphere, and it looks a lot like the clouds is the euphemism for them, for what they are. Combinations of moisture and electricity and metals, and the forces of sound and frequency and what that looks like. So just one aspect of geoengineering, more to come.
Engineering that most people don't talk about, including actual solutions, which I think helps connect several dots and expand the mind about reality as a whole, while analyzing what in the hell just happened in the eastern United States. And of course, all of this information and an encyclopedia of my work can be found on my website at theorgondonor.com. So jumping in, I think this completely unnatural orchestrated weather disaster has to do with far more than just a physical attack to control the weather, or steal the land, or produce more toxic lithium products, all in the name of the climate hoax. While those things are all valid puzzle pieces to this, weather manipulation and geoengineering is just a small part of a bigger picture. And my personal view is that I think simply saying, quote, they control the weather, leaves far too many questions unanswered about this reality in which we exist. For example, it appears that a lot of people across the world, including many people who've contacted me, are experiencing less chemtrail activity in recent months. Yet the world is sort of on fire right now, and the weather warfare clock is 2 seconds to midnight. Based on my work with orgone gifting and power busting, I think the reduction in chemtrail activity that many are experiencing is connected to a shift in an ongoing frequency war. But to clarify, I absolutely do not believe the lack of chemtrail activity is the result of some 5D ascension process in which the Earth is crossing the Rainbow Bridge.
Important take there. This isn't the all love and light. That, yeah, includes the transcendence of so-called dimensions. There's only, pretty sure there's only 3 that I know of. That's a metaphysical conversation for another time with someone else to bounce those ideas off of. But yes, what it takes to change something like that is being stratospheric aerosol injections, the aspect of geoengineering that we see most clearly, which turns into cloud-like elements in the sky. Anyway, how do we combat that if we do think of that as a less than ideal circumstance?
More on that in a bit. Now, I think the parasites of this realm attacked with Hurricane Helene for the same reason or reasons as they did with Maui, or COVID, or 9/11, or this current shit show between the cackling hyena and Orange Man Bad. Think about this. How the hell does a hurricane travel 1,000 miles inland and up into the mountains, targeting humans with obviously strategic detail and enough coincidences to instantly black out a New World Order bingo card? I think most of you would agree that if coincidences were currency, we'd all be millionaires at this point. My philosophy and belief system about this reality, or realm, remains the same. This place is manipulated by frequency, energy, and vibration. I think all of you who are listening to this are aware of this quote, or at least semi-familiar, and we tend to credit Nikola Tesla for it. Whether or not that's true, that's another story for another time. The point is, we've all heard it. However,
so Tesla and Walter Russell were near contemporaries, I think. Someone can fact check me on that. I'm always open to a factual fact check, not an opinion fact check. An opinion check is what all those banners are that you see on social media. Anyway, the more I learn, I'm glad I waited to learn more about Walter Russell and not have it first strike me, or even remotely for the first time strike me based on what Terrence Howard put out on Joe Rogan's podcast. And I won't take that much away from him. He's someone who's clearly interested in that aspect of the work, and that is likely an improving perspective on things. If you even weigh some of Walter Russell's work in the balance of what you believe. And there's more to be said on that. I just wanted to make that reference as we broaden the conversation today and beyond, that as much as we talk about Tesla, who were the foils of these men and women during their time, and how much do we know about them? I may have spoken recently, thanks to, as highlighted by Owen Benjamin for unauthorized.tv and beyond, his great special. I'll share that. We'll talk about that. More to come on him. We'll cruise on this for a little bit.
many people manipulate this statement to fit a New Age agenda that life is simply a kumbaya festival of glow sticks and overpriced Buddha bowls in Bali or Tulum, playing with singing bowls and tuning forks and solfeggio frequencies, completely ignoring the inter and multidimensional elephant in the room that's trying to play God with frequency. Basically, they preach everything is frequency, energy, and vibration, but then completely ignore the frequency, energy, and vibration weapons like EMF technology, NexRad, Doppler radar, and CERN. Honestly, I think too many people only want to explore these frequency concepts concepts as far as the information that only makes them feel good, leaving out massively important components to comprehending this reality. This is the core basis of why, no matter how dumb and vaccinated the situation becomes, I focus on the same philosophy, mission, and goals that I've had pre and post COVID, regardless of the agendas, regardless of the dumpster fire that is this Twilight Zone, and regardless of whatever is happening in the truth-seeking movement that appears to be at war with itself, imploding because it can't agree on whether this realm is a unicorn playground of love and light or a prison planet of hell with some sadistic demigod. When it comes to my work with orgone and busting power.
So I think that's an important point there that he offers.
Itself imploding because it can't agree on whether this realm is a unicorn playground of love and light or a prison planet of hell with some sadistic demigod.
The way in which I'll just speak for, can't speak for everyone, but yes, I mean, themes that I see among some of the communities that I follow is that they really struggle with some elements of the world that we might consider sadistic or evil or unjust or just sad experiences of life that anyone or all of us share, and still hold space for, yes, all the love and light that the New Agers love to focus on, myself included. Lots of beautiful love and light to be realized. And again, I mean, yeah, the the things that make it feel, make us feel stuck and make us feel hemmed in by death and change. And depending on where you fall on that spectrum of perspective, then I think it impacts how you interact with issues like this. And you know, he's showing his orgone solutions. These some of them are towers. Yeah, I mean, are there ray guns, as we might think of them, that combat this level of influence on our climate?
When it comes to my work with orgone and busting powers, I just don't give a shit. And I maintain the same mindset I've had since I set out to do this work years ago, to do what I can with the time I have in this shit show, to leave this nut house in better condition than how I found it, and to quite literally bust every last goddamn frequency weapon on Earth, starting at my own front door. That's it. So the reason hurricanes exist in mountains now, because of course that's a thing here on Planet Stupid, is because reality is molded by frequency technology, and that technology is woven through the literal fabric of this reality. This realm is not what you think it is. That doesn't mean we have the answers, but that sure as shit doesn't mean we're
The headline he just posted from some parody is banner says, "Breaking news: people are fucking stupid."
miserable. It means the answers provided thus far aren't good enough, or they just plain suck. They answer nothing, and they just produce more questions. There is a frequency war occurring, whether you like it or not. Get over it. You will not be barred from the 5D unicorn's butthole simply for having a negative thought about something negative. Grow up and start addressing the problem instead of spiritually bypassing it and producing more cancer in this safe and effective cesspool of nonsense and denial. A friend told me one of the best quotes I've ever heard about this reality, and that is that most humans cannot have and hold a negative thought and be able to detach from it. So instead, they spiritually bypass, because otherwise they think they won't get into heaven or be able to create a more comfortable life. When you hear me say, go bust towers with Orgonite, what I'm saying is, put some goddamn Orgonite devices around every single EMF device being unleashed on humanity and Mother Nature. There's a reason the frequency fence is being expanded and strengthened at an exponential rate. Don't just look at the scary blue-tinted blinking infographics being passed around by know-it-alls on the internet. Look at your home, your neighborhood, your school, your place of work. Look at the streets and the place.
So it's a salient point as well, just to realize how surrounded we are, and unfortunately the images include things like cell and 5G and connection towers being posted in and among, and then in what is a really, I find, disgraceful, disgusting, false portrayal of nature, making 5G towers to, covered and have these casings to blend in and look like trees and plants, and it's just, the symbolism overlaid in our reality to experience that. Again, I think of it like tattoos on your body, or artwork that surrounds you, to say nothing of the moving pieces of your, the animals and the food and the walls and everything that really is our environment. Again, so to make this point that I'm trying to make. The symbols that occupy that have a tremendous magical influence on who we think we are in our story. And yeah, to blend technological infrastructure that is not great for our biology, to say nothing of, I mean, we're quite resilient, as are the trees and the animals, but it's disrupting all of us on varying levels of significance.
Places you go on a daily basis. HARP is not a facility in Alaska. It's a network that includes the device in your hands right now.
Yeah, so but and to come full circle a bit more on that, how ever present it is the yes, we talk about weather manipulation. There are these places in Alaska and China and Russia and the equator and all over. It's as ever present as anything else. I mean, you're not disconnected. I mean, you are a part of this massively interconnected web. And so you do leave a mark. I mean, you do send a ripple through that ever balancing web, and we do have these forces that try to balance each other out. And so what is the balance to this level of yes, infrastructure that I mean, there's infrastructure, or the way a road is laid or a building is constructed, that doesn't have too much of an impact on your biology compared with the frequency, the non-native electromagnetic frequencies, EMF, that definitely have an impact on your ability to operate as an electrical being. All of your electrical processes of your blood and digestion that produce heat and steam, your chi, that is your life force that we refer to, is impacted, like I said, on varying levels by this level of constant connection, where you, because you are an electromagnetic being, are compelled to interact with our devices. So, for instance, how I combat, and you pick your battles with these things, and it's not about fear and completely avoiding all technology. It's just how do you cultivate a balance. So I do have a grounding mat, grounding technology, good balance to the electric technology that I'm surrounded by when I record. Go outside before and after. Thankfully, it's a beautiful sunny rise. It's almost peak UV index, so I'll try to get out of here for all of our sakes in about an hour. And yeah, I think these light blockers, again, to harmonize and support the resilience of my biocircadian rhythm, which is greatly impacted by light and the quality of it, and again, the pervasiveness of it. All of these are interconnected webs of who we are. And so this is to say a lot for our interaction, both with how we receive and how we reflect transmitting energies from our technology, because it can be a two-way street.
Now. And just in case there's some off-grid folks listening and thinking that you're somehow removed from the demonic 5G bubble and frequency fence, I can assure you that there's no shortage of weaponry as far as the off-grid eyes can see. And frankly, at this point, with all of the tower-busting adventures I've done on planet Earth, tackling forests, deserts, valleys, mountains, water, and every other desolate and remote place that I've ventured over the years, if ever there was a word more closely connected to irony and oxymoron, it would be the words off-grid. It doesn't exist. So when New Agers lecture the rest of us that we're all in this together, I can agree to a certain extent, but I think that they have no idea what that truly means and how deep it actually goes. Like, hey, do you remember when the US literally outlawed the manufacturing of incandescent light bulbs over the last few years? It's because the LED light spectrum just sinks to the goddamn HARP network. They did it on purpose, and not to help the environment, because it literally does the opposite. You know why electric vehicles are becoming the norm? And yes, I know they're easier to control and legislate and put in a kill switch and all of that, but more so, it's because they're cell towers on wheels. Get offended, I don't have the energy to care. I don't think you are a bad person for owning a Tesla. You do you. So, if you own an electric vehicle, put some orgonite in your car. In fact, if you own a vehicle, put some orgonite in your car. Furthermore, do you know why you have to update your iOS every 30 seconds, pushing you into newer and stronger devices in order to maintain your lifestyle or small business? Have you ever tried to run a business or get paid without owning a smartphone? While it's not impossible, it's damn near impossible at this stage in the game. You ever notice the homeless are given free and subsidized smartphones light years before they're given a free meal? Yeah, there's a reason for that. Because whatever this demonic AI frequency running this shit show is doing, it has to keep pace above and beyond the natural progression of humanity's and nature's frequency that are continually competing and fighting back.
Yeah, I think that's a growth thing. I think that's I just have to redo the damn bloody Tolkien poem that I'm in love with, having an absolute love affair with at the moment, thanks to the Forge of Tolkien series that I've been enjoying about the Lord of the Rings and all those myths, and progress, and what is sacrificed in the name of progress is so much. I mean, this certainly doesn't allow people room to breathe and expand and live. And yeah, that does make people feel hemmed in for sure. So, yeah. So all of the opportunities, all the again, the points of contact that we make, there's a growth mindset I see looking to capitalize on that and bring a technological hardware and frequency network to every locus of our existence. And that doesn't bring you much peace for your body, mind, spirit, all.
I can agree with the New Age concept of humanity awakening to a certain extent, but there are factors in this equation that I choose to not ignore like they do, because it's only helping to feed the system and guarantee its continued survival. What I mean by that is the system is not just going to give up trying. There will always be one more GMO, one more clot shot or booster, one more frequency weapon, and one more method to detach and destroy the human soul. One of the most common questions I receive is from people asking, will Organite stop my Wi-Fi router or cell service? And in the past, I would simply say no. In the present, based on years of experience and connecting puzzle pieces about energy in the ether, I would still say no, but eventually yes. It will screw up your devices because it screws up the sentient frequency coercing through its network. So do solar flares. You ever notice the internet and cell service absolutely sucks on the brightest of bright blue sunny days when the sun is barfing on us with a signature hot windy frequency download? You are in a frequency war, back and forth, day after day.
That's maybe a more technical one. Do turn into how you feel based on when you go outside and you observe how it feels and what's going on in the sky and with the sun or the moon or sunset, sunrise, mid solar noon, take your pick, and just tune into how it feels. And that, yes, that can be like the just the physical elements and your attitude and things like, yes, your connectivity, your access to internet network.
There's a reason technology is constantly glitching and demanding an upgrade to continue, because it's basically competing against natural evolutionary improvements to biological life that's always fighting to get back into its original natural existence. Some of you have heard me talk about how you can convert GMOs back into heirlooms and why Satan has to continually update its patents and seeds. Think of fasting for the human body. When you leave it alone and stop bastardizing it, it immediately begins repairing itself to the best of its ability. That goofy bastard from Jurassic Park literally told us about this in the 90s when he said the following.
Oh, I'm simply saying that life finds a way.
And so I'm somewhere near the end of drawing certain conclusions that the only thing this AI Borg system can do at this point is build more towers and pack and stack a more heavily concentrated frequency fence. I don't think it has another plan, other than to just make more energy poison. Just look around at the advancements in human life and technology. It's just more useless Wi-Fi shit and less going outside to play in the sun. And I'm sure there's more to it, but I'm trying to keep this video shorter.
It's just more useless Wi-Fi shit and not enough going out to play in the sun is the issue of the age and can summarize this whole video.
Just go bust some damn towers. Most of you listening to this already know. But with that said, before any of the self-righteous conspiracists or truth seekers get ahead of themselves simply because they know about things like HARP or Nexrad towers and that crap hiding out in the ocean, or that CERN thing that's responsible for the disappearance of a cornucopia or one of the most famous movie lines in history, take a minute to comprehend what the term frequency fence actually means. Whenever I use it, the frequency fence means the network from every EMF device on Earth. Every single EMF device on Earth has been created intentionally as a weapon to reinforce the inter-multi-cosmo quantum blah 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 dimensional energy bubble that manipulates reality. And in the case of this argument and video, it specifically controls and manipulates the weather. And many of you who follow my work already know what I'm about to say, and that is
Well, and it's all related. That's all capital E environment. That's the terrain that we're talking about when we talk about the terrain paradigm of health. That you respond thoughtfully and on as many levels as you can guide to the best of your ability for your body, your heart, your soul, your mind, your presence, your ego. How do you render all of it reified into health constantly? And it's harder than it's been in some ways, and in others, and it is slowed greatly by victim consciousness, that like all this is happening to me and there's nothing I can do about it. Well, that's the most disempowering thing. And even for the ideas that I certainly continue to struggle with, which are solutions to corrupt government and system and healthcare and insurance. I mean, yeah, I struggle to find those solutions often, and it does begin with the principles of who I am interacting with that. And if I believe there's nothing I can do, then I've victimized myself.
In the simplest nutshell, it's because chemtrails are only a microscopic component to the overall agenda of controlling the weather, and the weather manipulation is only a symptom or a byproduct of a much more grandiose agenda to manipulate and control this entire realm. That was a major conversation point in my interview on the Terrain Theory podcast. The entities responsible for chemtrails in the first place don't need them anymore, or at the very least, they require fewer than ever in order to accomplish the same results as the old world as this timeline of this twilight zone progresses or collapses on itself. In regards to my friend and her question, I think she's more curious if there's a puzzle piece we're missing in figuring out why specifically the Appalachian areas were devastated by the recent hurricane activity. And like her, I'm wondering that myself. It's a head scratcher and a huge puzzle piece, but aside from why they did it, I can tell you how they did it. It's just one of the many reasons that I venture through the mountains and hilltops, because there's some sinister weaponry hiding in nature that needs to be addressed. Back in the fall of 2018, when I was just a freshman or sophomore in Orgonite class, we spent a week gifting the Enchanted Circle in New Mexico, with some extra time spent in Taos, Santa Fe, and Los Alamos. Throughout the following months, they had record snowfall. Even just during our visit, within a few days, our clearly vaccinated Airbnb host was bitching about the lack of rainfall that year, while it was literally pouring the entire time we were there. It was during this trip that I began wondering about mountains. I'd heard they were basically nature's pyramids. I figured they had an energy component to them. So imagine, what if you infest a mountain with towers and harp weapons? Perhaps you can just change the entire frequency of the entire mountain. To this day, it's why I gift Orgonite in the mountains, and why I strongly encourage anyone living in the mountains to start venturing around and start burying earth pipes around your community and surroundings. And
If you can, even if you don't live among the mountains, for those of you that do or have, you can just imagine what that means on your plane of existence. Your very real environment of how you have to interact with the weather. And I say interact because it's not just oppressing you. The weather is not oppressing you. Our body adapts. Its temperature, its activity, of course, certainly exposure to the sun and the fresh air and things like that, that absolutely make an impact. And so the mountains, I was on top of Mount Washington 2 weeks ago, and I mean, it was sweating. I mean, it was early October, and shirts off, and swam afterward in the freezing cold water, because there's certainly a different beautiful balance to call in what Walter Russell has talked about, the stillness and the motion, the resonance of, to have a resonance, you really need interaction of points, but lower vibration and higher vibration. And because I was going to say there's certainly an energizing and a moving aspect that makes you feel good and want to get out and be active in the mountains. And I mean, yes, there's motion among those mountains, but they are still. And so they provide that to our realm, that stillness of which other things can vibrate. And especially the electricity and the metals and the air and the water circulating. That's a lot for it to, it influences our area. And then when you inject the vaccination that are these heavy metals of cell towers and wires and cables, it makes its mark.
And And in the case of current events, I just assume the Appalachian areas hit hardest have probably been the most energetically compromised, making it easy to mold reality in that area and destroy it. There's more to it, but that's my Cliff's Notes version. I know some people will hate this and shrug it off, but my personal view is that this happened for a multitude of reasons, including the obvious that the parasites obviously want the land, and yes, of course they'll mine the lithium in North Carolina. And yes, they intentionally displaced a bunch of right-leaning, freedom-loving conservative voters to make them suffer at this moment during the election season. That's just a few motives on a list of countless motives that we'll probably never know. But I think the most important one is the same as it was for Maui or any other tragedy in human history, and that is to cause misery and to feed the collective battery that the parasites feed from in the first place. If anything, they're manufacturing and harvesting the current misery to generate the next hurricanes and tragedies to come. To make sense of this, here's an example. When people ask me who I think will become the next president, and side note, yes, I'm aware politics is fake like everything else, we get it. You don't own a TV, even though you spend 80 hours a week watching Rumble, Odyssey, and Rockfin, so congrats on beating the
These are too good not to treat those of you too who are just listening, which I can't blame you because so it says how to tell them apart, and it's the Democrat and Republican Party animals depicted, and on the left, which is the left, it says I will shoot you in the face, and on the right it says I will look the other way while he shoots you in the face.
president. And side note,
It's
yes, I'm
damn
aware
true.
politics is fake like everything else, we get it. You
And then on the left it says, vote for me if you want the New World Order delivered today. And on the right it says, vote for me if you want the New World Order delivered tomorrow with extra stops. And that is about as true as it gets.
don't own a TV, even though you spend 80 hours a week watching Rumble, Odyssey, and Rockfin, so congrats on beating the system and the trap of mindless entertainment. But I
Voted
digress.
early in an election
Regarding
that
the
clearly
election,
won't be
I
over
think
until
it'll
well
be
after
Trump. But
election day.
specifically, and of course I could be wrong, it'll be Trump because he was the 45th president, which adds up to 9, and he would then be the 47th president, which adds up to an 11. And this sadistic system loves its 9/11. Also, the story goes that he'll supposedly be sentenced to whatever stupid criminal script thing is happening. I don't know, I don't care. But as soon as I heard about the sentencing that's apparently set for late November, it makes the most sense to me because the system feeds on emotion and especially on misery. If Trump wins, Americans on the left go psycho or depressed, and the other side will rejoice. Then he gets sentenced to prison a few weeks later, so the left will rejoice.
Yeah, well, either way, it's the same. You get the fact that anyone is rejoicing or deeply upset. Either way, that is the energy suck that the powers that should not be demand. That's the consent of attention and emotion, it seems. And at the least, I'm just glad that it doesn't cost me any emotion, that I'm purely indifferent to that outcome. There are so many other battles to be fought than voting for the taller of two midgets in a race of two, in a category of two, for morality and true power.
While the other side goes psycho and depressed. Basically, in my opinion, the energy generated by this man is far too valuable for the Matrix system to waste. You can think this isn't important, and good for you, we get it. Here's your I didn't vote sticker. Neither do I. But these elements, as trivial and stupid as they are on the surface, they help to decode the mechanics of this realm, because it's a battery, and humanity is the charger. And so, this is partially why the Appalachian area was devastated by Hurricane Helene. Simply put, misery and battery. But with that said, I'm sure there's more to it, because there isn't a single agenda in this realm that isn't composed of an infinite number.
The sequence being displayed in this video is sunrise after sunrise being blocked by these. They can only be described as unnatural clouds, and if you're not sure what that means, you can probably just look up natural or unnatural clouds and see what you get for imagery, and it's quite obvious in my opinion. And when they're blanketing the sky, and I'll just say in an area where you would consider it to be clear more often than not, if it's by the ocean. I was by the ocean, and then home, probably 15 miles from the ocean, maybe less if I just drove east and out. But anyway, I mean, I spent half the summer spending every morning on Nantucket Sound, and most of them were hazy, and just you don't have a clear view of the sun. And thankfully sun is still powerful enough to shine through, warmly and amazingly, and no but, and it's your access to it is being greatly hindered by something unnatural. And stratospheric aerosol injections include things like chemicals and just burnt off gasoline and oils and certainly heavy metals, again being burnt through the jet fuel. And there are so many layers and nuances to the geoengineering discussion and what exactly it is and what it means for you. As I said, I'm deeply grateful to nature that our bodies and our air and our trees and plants and earth are incredibly resilient to all of that. And the things like, thankfully I'm broadening my perspective to hold the space for realities like to circulate food on a mass production basis, which is what we depend on. Most people would panic if the grocery store, not a farmer's market or a farm market, if the grocery store did not have all the food you usually get, during your weekly visit. A lot of people would panic, and that's not a sustainable way to live. And what makes it sustainable and reasonably affordable is preserving it. And I joke with people around here that in New England, our apples this time of year are from the grocery store. We have the best goddamn apples in the world right now, and or at least not from this state. In Massachusetts, your apples are from fucking Connecticut or Maine. It's like it's mind blowing. That's literally the low hanging fruit of eating locally and seasonally, and we have a system that doesn't support that. And yeah, it keeps people from developing a sustainable level of energy where they live. Challenging for people traveling or not where they're from on a native basis. Let's bring this video home and then I'll wrap.
Of layers. Some are just more prominent than others. So with that said, I hope this video helps expand the minds of the open-minded and provide some beneficial puzzle pieces to comprehending what in God's name is happening with the weather and reality. At least that's my goal. If you're a human who's seeking higher level thinking about this realm, I encourage you to go check out that episode, the interview I did on Terrain Theory Podcast, which is also linked on my website at theorgondonor.com. And aside from that,
yeah, it's great stuff, and that's why I wanted to circulate it here. And as far as I know, this is the open source aspect of the internet, and I look forward to having interactions with the people putting out a lot of this content. I do see myself as a curator more than a creator at this moment. Just have a lot of what I think are, a lot of them are entertaining, if nothing else, certainly fascinating, different perspectives on what's going on in this world and in this realm, and why our stories are playing out the way that they are. Here's another good one. Speaking of stories from Manly P. Hall, Freemason, I think that's relevant just because it connotes a deep level of gnosis, of knowledge, especially of the world's history as we know it often, and certainly deeper than that, the true history, the esoteric history, the underlying myths of our time. And there I go speaking in triplets again, because I'm obviously a Freemason. So but let's listen to Manly Palmer Hall. But dang it, nope, I don't want you to listen to my music right now as good as no, we're gonna go for this.
The average person who goes to school has no idea why humanity exists. He has no idea concerning a spiritual factor in material existence. He has no general comprehension of the rules of life as these differ from the rules of social and political structures. He does not know where he came from. He does not know why he is here, and he has no idea where he's going. And on this compound ignorance, we offer degrees and make brilliant scholars of the people who have never answered any of those questions. It is one of these amazing things that we have created a great hierarchy of well-lettered ignorance. We have made everything subservient not to wisdom, but to the passing advantages of the hour. We're in exactly this position politically today.
That was some time ago, and I think it's quite poignant at present. If you conceive of being on a journey, that's why the tale of the ring and Frodo and Sam and their companions and defenders is so profound, because it really is a journey into a dangerous, shadowy place. Excuse me. And if you don't know where you came from, where you are, or where you're going, how will you find your way? And think about how literally elevating it is to rise in your own estimation, in your own way, in your own beautiful path. If you are rising to that occasion and the challenges you put before yourself, these limited words we have, challenge. If I issue a challenge to myself or to another out of honor, or if I can, as an opportunity to rise, or if we just conceive of it for ourselves as we conflate it with burden and wound and trauma, just to be challenged. And I know I felt like that at the time, and then it's a tale as old as time. You look back in your memory and you do find that ideally I've learned lessons. I continue to. There's still cycles I go through because I haven't learned all of the lessons yet, and so it goes, and that's a challenge that I accept. Can we run this back just one more time? I mean, with the music, with Manly P. Hall, the secret.
The average person who goes to school has no idea why humanity exists. He has no idea concerning a spiritual factor in material existence. He has no general comprehension of the rules of life as these differ from the rules of social and political.
Rules of life. That especially relates to how your body is meant to function to support your life and your vitality and your longevity that is inherent. One of my favorite memories from Fall Into Here in Wimberley, Texas, several weeks ago at the equinox, which we'll talk a little bit about that and the changing of the seasons and the significance of that, and why the elections are this time of year in most countries, especially ours here in the United States of America. Was among I'm trying to pick among the many favorite memories, but the shirt that we have coming out, which we'll have to circulate, "We used to be better," is what it says on the shirt, and then probably on the back it'll say, "We used to live to be 700 years old," and the arguments that that's what we're capable of, at least 100, 200 years of life that we've walked away from slowly to our detriment. And it is sort of a travesty to see lives end after 60 years and 70 years. It's really, again, when all you have to do is think about it in our limited conception of time, it's still not that much time, especially as the years toll on, as the time tolls on, and so the convenience or the appeal of what goes on this hour does not stand against timelessness. It doesn't. What are the things that are truly timeless? What is true always? And that's the benefit of considering universal principles. And if we feign ignorance for what might be universally true, in certain broad ways, or just a handful of ways, if we don't consider those at all and only give ourselves up to what's going on right now. Again, I mean, it of course it seems like there's so much going on right now. There's a war with a malevolent level of violence because certain groups feel they have no other option than to be this cruel and violent, and give way to such hatred at any cost. That's going on in again a very significant part of the world where it seems like things have been happening for all times in history. What impact do the mountains and the rivers and the deserts and the valleys have on those areas when it's infused with such a dynamic force, which absolutely has an influence over the weather, which is, you know, that level of religious and identity, cultural commitment that people feel. And it's on the same level as the political one that plays out in the Ukraine and Russia, as it does in the Middle East, as it does here spiritually and emotionally here at home, wherever home is. And that's why I believe in the teaching of my spiritual teacher, Fortune de Saint Germain, that it is infinitely more important what happens in your house and my house than what happens in the White House. Because if we don't have any inner fortitude, something within us that's not dependent on outside forces, again, we all have some level of dependency on this. I have a dependency on this system. I wouldn't know how to manage a well-organized street, let alone neighborhood, let alone town, let alone world. So I'll just start with my house and renovate that and invest in that and manage here. And all that requires of me to be someone capable and reliable and honorable. That's a massive amount of work, if I do say so myself. And so I have a dependency on other systems, and I have to have a center around which to move. And if that's not grounded in as much truth and love and commitment to responsibility, then I will struggle. And so higher-minded, higher-hearted pursuits are worthwhile to guide me.
Political structure. He does not know where he came from. He does not know why he is here, and he has no idea where he's going. And on this compound ignorance, we offer degrees and make brilliant scholars of the people who have never answered any of those questions. It is one of these amazing things that we have created a great hierarchy of well-lettered ignorance. We have made everything subservient not to wisdom, but to the passing advantages of the hour. We're in exactly this position politically today.
Bringing it to you for real, down from all ages. Is Bentley Palmer Hall there? Yes. So this time of year, with that specifically in mind, politically, it's fraught with so much. Yeah, I mean, so much momentum that goes unchecked or redirected. I think we take for granted just the flow of events, and oh, it's Christmas. Oh, it's an election year. Oh, it's a football season. Oh, it's a school time. You know, I feel like we take for granted the impact that sense of inevitable recurrence has on our lives. And certainly an advocate for that in the seasonal aspect, which we're going to talk about just a little bit, because yeah, it's the aspects of this time of year, to be coming out of the Libra season. Libra, I'm learning, was our origination for the LB, for the measurement of weight as pounds, as Libra, LBS, because it's certainly a part of the harvesting season, where to determine our production and largely our sense of progress as well, we get this opportunity to reap and to measure, and then possibly distribute. That's part of the harvest as well. Are we really just keeping everything, or are we sharing that among others? And it leads us into this time of yes, judgment, and that's precipitated by the heat of summer, and what precipitated that was the cold thaw of spring, and we're gearing up for another winter. So you have these dynamic events that prey upon people's energy, and then what does it mean to them go into a winter mode where potentially you feel this frost of anger against certain people who supported someone, or this person themselves, whether it's Camel Toe or the Orange Man. Take your pick. None of it's neither is anything you're going to be feeling great about come Christmas. It's certainly not going to ruin my Christmas, and certainly not my Thanksgiving, which I love as just a time to connect. Yeah, so a lot of this takes place with a total ignorance for these cycles in our lives, and as Hall said there, where we came from. In the States, we have a very limited history, and so you have to go back to our origins. I mean, where did we come from in terms of this system that certainly has a lot of momentum? But the governing is different than how you get there. I mean, I can't begrudge this system that delivers my mail and maintains again. I mean, not my roads directly with taxes, but I'm not even talking about the taxes factor. Just the fact that they do it at all is pretty well done. I mean, it's a pretty decent operation for the most part. As much as I criticize how it is owned by the corporations that are a city, a county, a state, nation. I mean, that's all commerce, is when you get into paying people to do things and contract and perform. The performance element is where we're called to hold people accountable to their negligence or their ignorance or their malevolence in their performance. And that's different than the structure and operation itself. So I'm distinguishing between what it means to select, not elect. I'm certainly selected when you only get a choice between two. So there you go. I mean, I certainly did not choose as many choices as I can tune into, because that has everything to do with consent. Then, I mean, yeah, I have to lock into as many choices as possible, including the fact that I had no choice in this ballot. Well, and at the same time, not disempower myself. So, my choice from here on out is, will I interact with it? No. Especially because, yeah, it has no way. It is I'll say almost no way of not only reflecting my principles, I'll say, interests and details of how my life gets, my own performance, let alone the performance standards of others. There's nothing about anyone I've met, and not that I'm so great and so perfect and I've got it all figured out. It's just that how I would imagine dealing with my fellow men and women is not exemplified in not only the character but the policies of anyone I've met, or excuse me, anyone I've met. President Trump. I haven't met Kamala Harris. I just get a story and a depiction, which so fair enough. They haven't convinced me at all, and really no one has. The interest that they do espouse openly. I don't have to guess too much at their values and what they value to support war and tyranny over some people. I mean, it's okay. You say Trump's gonna dominate the land as a dictator. They're all empowered to do that anyway, if people feel that they have that power. I mean, there's a belief in power that has to underlie people's pursuit of it and desire for it, and how they feel like they can wield it. By voting, you concede that someone would have that upper hand to dominate you. I mean, as a master would a slave. That's depending on who you contract with to provide a service to you. That's something different, where you are dependent on them for that service. Totally different. I mean, I think it's obvious by now that there is no standard of performance to make someone perform as a public servant. I don't want to make that sound so absolute. I just think that they are employees. I mean, to keep the profit machine going, or just call it a revenue machine going of government, to say nothing of how people aggrandize their own status. I mean, I'm gonna pardon politicians that. I think that everyone is on that hustle to enrich themselves, and that again is a lot of momentum that provides our currency, our current that we all get swept up in how we deal with each other. So I can pardon that. There's a system though that makes them beholden to that. Are these decision things that will keep, however they think of it, jobs or economics or circulation of money, whatever these politicians get told, and say it's some sort of responsible way of enforcing rules on people that are disempowering, are anti-life, and so as someone who doesn't see any merit in investing someone with that opportunity, because it's not that it doesn't apply to me, it doesn't apply to men and women of honor, and anything I can do to empower people to believe in that for themselves is something I have to consider. I'm running out of water, and I'm not running out of daylight. It's just that it's looking surprisingly clear. I'll be out there later playing some tennis, and which is a win for October the 17th. Full moon tonight, this evening. Must be why I'm feeling so emotional about all this stuff. But it's some real shit. I mean, and to bring it back to other threads in my life, the more I explore disease, this isn't, as someone recently shared, Sarah Kleiner, who developed the My Circadian app, it's just called that. If you look at My Circadian app, it's superb so far from what I've been able to use from that. Just how you pick your spots with your day in relationship to the sun, so I mean, again, these are rapid changes. might have to read a couple more things, and yeah, just bring some good action with my commentary, because or not, just read you guys some good things, because it's such a dynamic time of the year. This is our, I guess, our second, no, first. Oh, the cats are, the cats have been, they've been really active at night, or just at the witching hour, just at bedtime, but they get after it, and it's fucking great and crazy to listen to. And so it goes with the full moon in full effect. I'm trying to think if this is, I think this is the first one since, let me check. So shout out Robert Phoenix, the legend. Moon in, is that true? Mm-hmm. Oh, this is me. Wait, is this me? No. Yeah, Moon in Aries. We're going that way. Ooh. Ooh. And Sun in Libra. Again, still in this time of weighing and balancing. And this comes into, I don't even know where my video is anymore. This goes into the zodiac and the salts of salvation, which has greatly informed my usage of tissue salts. But this especially, gosh darn it, that balancing of organic and inorganic and elemental materials as our biological makeup is just yet another essential aspect to tune into. And of course, I use the tuning verbance deliberately, because to develop a resonance, we need these substances. Yeah, so we can be that stillness and motion, that balanced polarity, and disease, as it was reflected to me, is a reflection of closing down the bridge to our life force. Anything that disrupts our ability to have an effortless life flow that maintains our breathing, our digestion, our eyesight, movement. Just think about walking, that you have, to say nothing of running, which is so dynamic and dependent on balance. But just walking is a forward step and ostensibly a backward step. And yet you still, I mean, you can walk backwards and it's still the same thing. Laterally, I think it works too, just depending on your motion. But walking forwards or backwards, it still has the same center of, how do I describe it? Center of stillness, center of, I'll just leave it at center. I mean, your body moving through space like that still has a similar motion with the arms and the trunk and the upper body, excuse me, and the lower body as well. Your neck and your head. I mean, it's just so dynamic to walk. That has its, especially about what's essential about the trunk for your stability is it's the stability of your organs as well. And all of them are essential. I mean, not least of all your lungs and your heart, and your gastrointestinal system. And yeah, it's so there's also a pumping that goes on with that, and that is life force. I mean, and because we are, as I said, these heat beings, it's why fire is such an essential elemental for us. And it's I don't think it's a hierarchy necessarily. It's just that it's just so highly essential for us. So we know that we're alive. The warmer we feel, whether it's during sex or movement or just trying to stay alive in the wintertime, which we're hurtling towards. That requires a constant balance to move through, and it does produce a heat, and so that's our chi. It's a word for steam. And it is this source of life that knows exactly what is needed to bring about our physio-electromagnetic changes that support that that perpetual balance in response to our environment, in response to our moment by moment, our minute experience with our circumstances and how we have to respond differently, and whether that's requiring a lot of energy or stillness or digestion or movement from us. It's frequently changing, and this effortlessness that I'm supporting and exploring is for that allowance, this easy flow of chi. That easy flow is only obtained by reduction. It's not about constantly heaping on, especially to our bodies. They can only handle so much. I mean, yes, they're resilient and strong. What I'm saying is they're already inundated by a lot of frequency changes and a lot of demands on it. So instead of doing 80 different workout movements, if we pick some principles to master of squatting, of walking, of throwing, of pulling, of course getting up and down off the ground, I mean, that's hinging and squatting and pressing. It's so many dynamic things. We have to have a mastery of those sorts of movements again, and that's why I love working in so much, to do a qigong, tai chi, slow warm-up movement, take your pick, breathing movement with your limbs, embodiment exercises. They bring you into this effortlessness that leads to mastery, where you have a mastery over your body. And it's been a very profound experience for me to take a tennis racket, for instance, and go through what is otherwise a superbly demanding movement of serving a tennis ball, any tennis movement, like so many of these sports. And when you do it in uber slow motion, you are compelled to really tune into the sequence, especially of muscles. And you realize, which is something I'm very much obsessed with lately, is the sequence and stability of body segment functions, especially when I'm doing something like throwing, which is a serving motion, like hitting a ball, like climbing anything, chopping wood, walking. It's this almost immediate, and it does originate from the trunk and the spinal stability and simultaneous mobility to do anything. And it's a transfer up and down for things that are begun by the upper body as we perceive them in the chain, versus begun by the lower body. Thankfully, something like walking requires both. You do something like a pull-up, it can only seem upper body focused, although your legs are certainly a balance of density next to that. But the point being is that we certainly do need that stability, and the tremendous benefit to slowing something down. And you could say that about meditation. I mean, your life just slows down. I mean, anything that helps you feel slowed enough to seem almost still enough to perceive that which goes on around you, and then that which is going on within you. And on a physical level, to understand that, I mean, yeah, if you talk about just reaching your arm out, there's still, even though that's an isolated movement, which is entirely supported by a response from the rest of your body, and therefore registers with the rest of your body. So, I mean, yeah, you could take there's nothing in isolation in the body. I mean, my smirk and my smile right now, my breath, my tone of voice, my excitement is all registering with my body. And the more that is unswayed, as Steiner has, I've learned to pray. Through Steiner, I've learned to pray that I meet all moments with an equanimity, with a stillness, with a balance, so that I don't feel just immensely swayed by a moment, by a realization. Again, way off center can lead to injury if you're doing something. If you're trying to swing 50 pounds way outside your center, your center point with your spine and with your feet, then that can lead to certainly some injury. And it's no different mentally or spiritually, especially if you have some real people and events that you consider to be adversarial. And that is something that, of course, I struggle with. I've literally struggled with it on the physical level, and just doing too much outside my center that I wasn't ready for. And you don't know, sometimes you don't know why you're not ready for it on that level. You're like, okay, I feel strong and fast, but there are other reasons, and that's when the pain teacher comes around and you welcome their presence. Because it is so beautiful outside, I know I've been threatening to sign off here for a minute. Just trying to think of, do I want to share this passage that I haven't fully reflected on more than a time or two since I read it, but it just rings true, and so I thought it would be good grounding for what I feel like I try to do with this podcast and want to continue to pursue with this podcast, is curating all those different options of information about how healthy we are and can be, what we can do to commit our power in service of systems that, even if they are of governance and of somewhat relinquishing in power, how they can be healing and not so intensely restricting and growth by any means. I mean, and so the perspectives that I take in as part of my capital D diet include spiritual combined with solution oriented stories. And this one from The Ringing Cedars of Russia, the story of Anastasia, which I have been meditating on, is truly profound, and I'll do my best to bring that to life to you all now. I'm just looking for a good starting page. This is in a chapter called The Answer, and I'm just trying to get into to the mode to share this all with you. Conversation to which Anastasia says, "Tell me, Vladimir, do you think there is, well, some kind of intelligence out there? Does there exist a mind in the invisible world of the cosmic, in the universe? What do you think?" "I think it's true. You know, even scholars talk about that, as do mediums and the Bible. And this something, what would you say is the best word to describe it? I need to know this so that you and I can agree upon a definition. Say, for example, mind, intelligence, being, forces of light, vacuum, absolute, rhythm, spirit, God. Well, let's say God. All right, then. Tell me, does God attempt to communicate with man? What do you think? I do not mean by a voice from heaven, but through people, through the Bible, let us say, to offer a hint on how to be more happy. But the Bible was not necessarily dictated by God, Vladimir. Well, by whom then, would you say? People could have done that. People who wanted to invent religion. They sat down and wrote it collectively. You think it is that simple? People just sat down and wrote a book and thought up narratives and laws. A book that has lasted for millennia and is the most popular and widely read book that has ever existed to date. Over the centuries, a whole multitude of other books have been written, but few of them can compare with the Bible. What does that mean to you? I don't know, I admitted. Vladimir. Ancient books, of course, have been around for a long time, but most people today prefer contemporary literature, novels, detective stories, and all sorts of inferior stuff. Why is that so? Because reading them hardly requires any thinking. In reading the Bible, one is obliged to think at a faster pace, and there are many questions one must answer for oneself. Only then will it become clear. It unfolds itself, so to speak, to one's consciousness. If one looks upon the Bible merely as a statement of dogma, then reading and memorizing a few commandments is sufficient. But any dogma imposed from without, not grasped by one's inner being, precludes taking advantage of the opportunities afforded man as creator. What questions do we need to answer when we read the Bible? To begin with, replied Anastasia, you might try to figure out why Pharaoh was unwilling to allow the children of Israel to leave Egypt. Well, what's the... Oh God. All right, I'm pause here to say a couple things. I love that last line, the opportunities afforded man as creator. This is echoing being made in the image and likeness of the creator. If we are on the image and likeness, we can't help but create and understand that we co-create our experience and our reality. And her chastisement in a gentle way, that people just sat down and wrote a book and thought up narratives and laws. They're to precede narratives and laws are stories and universal truths. These things that can be codified because we can all recognize them. And so how do we organize them into a narrative, a law, a cultural norm, a society? Well, what's there to think about? Vladimir replied. The Israelites were slaves in Egypt. Who would want to let his slaves go? They worked hard and brought Pharaoh a good income. So thankfully now they're touching on victim consciousness, but it's a decent point. I mean, what master, if we think of ourselves as slaves, what master would want to let us go? Is it really so easy to leave the system? She replied, the Bible says that more than once the Israelites brought a plague over the whole land of Egypt. They even killed people's firstborn offspring along with those of animals. Sorcerers were later burnt at the stake for such acts. But here Pharaoh simply refused to let them go. Now answer the question. Where did the Israelite slaves get enough goods and cattle to spend 40 years traveling? Where did they get the weapons to seize and destroy cities along their route? And according to the biblical myth, Israelites supremely destructive. I mean, they were conquering people. And there you go. Woven into this story is the presence of waging a conquering war. And as I read it here, you could read it as it's undeniable. It's a fact of matter. There is no fact of matter. There is no matter of fact. You can always, or I shouldn't say, there are ways to transmute and redirect what we consider facts. Of course, I don't buy into the germ theory. I think this is more a metaphor of again the experience that brings on plagues and dis-ease among a people. So Vladimir replies to where did they get the weapons to seize and destroy cities along their route? What do you mean where? Didn't God give them everything? Do you think that was only God's doing? Then who? Man, Vladimir has full freedom. He has the opportunity to make use of all the bright resources God gave him originally, but he can make use of other resources too. Man represents a union of opposites. See, Vladimir, how the sun shines. That is God's creation. It is for everyone. For you and me, the snakes, the grass, and the flowers. But bees use the flowers to get honey, while the spider's power is to draw poison. Each of them has its own function, and no bee and no spider can do otherwise. Only man has a wider scope. Only man can act in more than one way. One man can rejoice at the first rays of the sun, while another might curse. Man, you see, can be both a bee and a spider. Does that mean God wasn't the only one helping the Israelites? How can you tell them what God actually did as opposed to what was merely attributed to him? When something significant is created through man, Anastasia explained, there are always two opposites at work. Man exercises freedom of choice. Which he will accept more of depends upon his purity and conscious awareness. Well, all right, let's accept that. So you were attempting to talk with him when you were standing at the base of the cedar? Yes, I wanted him to answer me. And your grandfather objected. You see, Vladimir, God's essence is not in the flesh. He cannot yell down to everyone from heaven, telling them how to live. But he wants things to be fine and whole with everyone. And so he sends his sons, people into whose mind and soul he has been able to break through, at least to some extent. I'll pause here to reflect. Yeah, to listen to the voice of God. I mean, how do you know you're speaking God's language anyway? That's a question we all have to ponder. How do I know I'm on the same wavelength as God and can hear that? It's becoming apparent to me that people want the false equivalence of that, or the not false, fabricated equivalency here through our political or social or relational experiences of someone to tell them how to live their life and what to do. And if since they're not getting it from God in any way, and even one that they perceive through their own morality and mortality, then they would like it if someone else, someone they think is more adult and more powerful than they are, to tell them what to do. And no false idols is a core teaching that has to be honored, or we choose to honor, hopefully to our growth, because otherwise, I mean, yeah, what we get with these false idols is that, as Anastasia says here, God wants things to be fine and whole with everyone. There are people who don't want that, and we would give to them. I mean, just by these two children in adult bodies, our basing their platforms are over on the fact that they count on division. They count on there being a group of people that they pull from who like them better versus people who don't like them at all and like someone else. I mean, that's such a childish game that's playing out. Not that we can't have debates and comparison and contrast, and the ability to contrast. I'm just saying the way in which they do it is, and we buy into, is so childish. I've been there. I'm not saying, it's not like I've never fucking voted. It's not like I've never fallen for the pure. It's consumption. If I'm so consumption minded of all of this information of people telling me what to do and who to vote for and what I can tell other people how to do, that's consumerism. And if I believe in a better way of doing things than just being consuming and not producing and not creating, then I'm a hypocrite if I give way to that. I try to mitigate that as best I can. I'll say possibly as some last context so I can finish this in a timely manner. The people who I choose to follow and really take in what they have to say, deeply listen to, are people that I get the impression that they have at least opened themselves. So here, so he sends his sons, people into whose mind and soul he has been able to break through, at least to some extent. Where I see glimmers of that in people, that's what I lean into, and try to bring that to you from from some people. It's yeah. So we'll listen to the atheists as well, but you gotta have. I'm just drawn to people who acknowledge and embody the degree to which God has they recognize the connection in their mind and soul to God. To continue, his sons then go and talk with other people. They speak different languages, sometimes through words, sometimes with the help of music or pictures or various actions. Sometimes they are listened to. At other times they are persecuted and killed, like Christ Jesus, for example. And still God is sending forth his sons. But as always, it is only some of the people who pause and listen to them, while others who are called do not get the message at all, and they violate the laws of a happy existence. I see. And that's why God will punish mankind by a global catastrophe, some kind of fearful judgment. God never punishes anyone, and he does not need catastrophes. God is love. But that is the way it was planned from the very beginning, created that way from above. When mankind reaches a specific point, one might say, in its unwillingness to accept the essence of truth, once the elements of darkness manifest in man reach that critical point, in order to avert total self-annihilation, a global catastrophe rushes in which takes away a great many people's lives and crushes the destructive life support system of artificial creation. The catastrophe serves as a lesson to those who are left alive. Following a catastrophe, there is a window of time in which mankind seems to go through a fearful hell, but it is a hell of their own making. It is those who are left alive that fall into this hell. Then for a while, their children survive as in a pristine original state, and they eventually reach a stage one could call paradise. Then they fall away again, and it all starts over again in tears. This has been going on for billions of earthly years. If all this has been inevitably repeating itself for billions of years, what then were you asking for? I wanted to find out how and by what means people could be made wiser without subjecting them to a catastrophe. You see, I have figured out that a catastrophe can be blamed not only on those who do not accept truth, but also on the absence of a sufficiently effective means of making the truth be seen, of making people alert to the truth. I was asking God to find such a means, to reveal it, either to me or someone else, to whom I feel is not really important. What is important is that it is there to be seen, and that it works. And what did he tell you? What kind of voice does he have? Nobody can tell what kind of voice he has. His answer takes form, as it were, in man's discovery of a thought spontaneously occurring to himself. After all, he can speak only through his particle that is present in every man, and this particle is already relaying information to every other part of the individual with the help of the rhythm of vibration. Hence the impression arises that man is doing it all by himself, though man himself can actually do a great deal. After all, man is God's likeness. In each man there is a tiny part breathed into him by God right at birth. He has given half of himself to mankind upon the earth. And the forces of darkness try by whatever means they can to prevent this God-reflected particle from acting out its high purpose, to distract man from communication with it, and through it, with God. It is much easier to fight with a small particle when it is all alone, especially if it is not connected to the basic force of the universe. To relate this to what we spoke about earlier, thanks to Manly P. Hall and among others, is calling a great deal of depth to our connection to the basic force of the universe. When we are so distracted from what our history and our origin, again, source might be, and what sort of God can we conceive of, can we believe in, instead of if it's all present and punishing and guilting or merciful or merciless, whatever. If we're disconnected and anything that disconnects and distracts us from a relationship with the basic force of the universe, And if that tells us that we're alone spinning through the void and that this one life is the only one we have, and it's all material, and it's all our base instincts are all that ride out in the end, and it's all self interest related, and it's all about the death and the impermanence. I mean, a lot of that is, some of those are half truths, some of those are lies. And that's the significance of not, if you don't know your cosmology, if you think that you're, in this void of vacuum, and spinning out, at thousands of miles per hour and so far from this, it just is, it's so disconnecting. But to continue here, but if these particles unite amongst themselves in bright aspirations, it is much more difficult for the forces of darkness to hinder them. Even if one single particle living in just one single man is in full contact with God, then it is impossible for the forces of darkness to overpower him, to defeat his spirit and mind. That means, Vladimir surmised, you appealed to God so that the answer would be given birth in you as to what to say to people and how to say it in order to avert a global catastrophe. More or less. And what answer was given birth in you? What words must be spoken? Words. Just words alone pronounced in the usual way are not sufficient. So many words have been spoken already. Yet humanity on the whole continues to move toward its own perdition. You have no doubt heard words to the effect that smoking is bad, that alcoholic drinks are bad. And this is repeated by a number of sources, including your own physicians, in the language you best understand, yet you still go on doing it. You go on doing it without regard for the deterioration in your own health, and even painful realizations will not restrain either you or many other people from these destructive habits. God says to you, you should not do that. And the message reaches you through pain. Well, there you go. That is the pain teacher. And pause for a sip. It's because you'll convince yourself somehow to do it, in spite of all the authority or reality, however you perceive it, that something is bad. There's a difference, right? But it's still just words coming down to you from on high, wherever they come from within, from without. Some words will win out over others, and you'll do these things anyway, these destructive habits. So it is the basic force of the universe, to use this language, that will, at some point, when you can't handle it anymore, present you with pain. It will present you with pain, and the only way to bounce back from that is to learn that lesson of the pain teacher. And it is not just your pain, but God's too. And yet you take painkillers galore and go on doing your own thing as before. So one of you gets to bail by numbing pain. God feels it with us. Again, you are not interested in thinking about what produces the pain. And the other higher truths are known to mankind, but they are not being acted upon. Time after time, they are rejected in favor of momentary, illusory gratifications. It means another way must be revealed to allow them not only to know, but also to feel other kinds of pleasure. Once man has learnt of these, he can compare and realize everything for himself. And he will unblock access to the God-bestowed particle within him. It is no good simply threatening man with a catastrophe. It is no good simply blaming those who do not accept truth. Everyone who brings the truth to others must understand how needful it is to seek a more perfect method of explaining it. That was the core message for me, is collaborating on and devising a more perfect way of communicating the truth, and not, you always see this depiction of, in order to get our point across to someone who doesn't speak our language, talking more loudly, when that's just a waste of time. There's no way that it's not a good way to try to reach understand. It's the same when even if you're speaking the same language with someone, and you opt for raising voices, no solid chance of reaching understanding when you go that route. There is a quieter and you have to lean into simplicity to understand one another. And yet some of the things we're talking about, revisiting entire concepts of law and health and how we relate to ourselves and others. There are simple things about that, but not easy things about that. And that's why it's called the work, because it will take some work to remove. The play can be the new things. I mean, yeah, when I'm trying new things out in the gym, I mean, it helps if I've done some releases and some retraining of movement to create those grooves that are easier to access. Fascia is a huge part of that. I can't wait to do my new Fascia Nation podcast and talk all about fascia as one of these other beautiful webs that keep us intimately and inexorably connected with ourselves, and have that be our reality, and the blockages that come with that. I mean, the adhesions is what they're referred to in fascia, knots and immobilities that do need to be broken up. We don't heap things on them, braces and ointments and painkillers. You don't keep things on that. You give it space to expand and not be blocked up again. And I'm just looking at my notes and thinking of writer's block, and that's just another that comes from a lack of meaning or purpose. And that's why I like to explore and consume and then create stories, mine and others, that will hopefully, hope is such a weak word again, that do create new experiences. And our reality is our experience. So I strive for a beautiful one and a strong one and an empowered experience. That's very fun. To be both author and character in my own story is quite profound. And so I have to think of the ways in which I'm moving through that. But yeah, the fascia will be a fascinating discussion coming up, and I'm certainly improving, I hope, and hopefully those of you feel as well, improving my ability to bring in good media and share that with you all. So the fascia one we will bring in to consider the integrity structure, to and also just to conceptualize or to visualize what it means in your body for all of the things that we associate with pain: joints, muscles, tissue, bone, even, however we think of that. So it's a beautiful time to be exploring these things. It is a full moon, and we'll still be in that departing season, returning to a new moon after this podcast releases. So just feel into that. Again, think about that combined with the weather, combined with whatever storm or serenity brews within you, how you have an influence over that, how you modify your own homeostasis and your ability to ride through different weathers, different seasons, because you do have that ability to do it, and to do it with grace. And we'll talk furthermore about disgrace, dis-ease, a lack of grace, a lack of ease, and those times that we can find ourselves in. There's always healing for that. There's always, I think, one of the beautiful things that we might learn from various religious or even philosophical perspectives on this world is that their grace is constantly available and abundant, and so is ease. And it usually invites us to become simple or simpler. And I'm going to do that now as I go outside, and I would wish you all the same, to breathe fresh air and have your feet on the earth and look into the sunshine or in the direction of the sun. Move your body, do something you enjoy, spend some time in quiet, nourish yourself with the right inputs, and have that all be in alignment with the truest you, the realist you, which usually lies beneath some layers of what may have been heaped on us by others that is not truly us. So good luck with that. good luck with that shedding process. Might keep some layers on for this cold and then shed in the summertime. So you've got time, my team, my family. And I wish all that for you, and higher and better. Until next time, when we'll talk about this and more. Happy full moon, happy harvest. Hope it's all a time of beautiful growth.